welcome to Chats, the television podcast, season 14, the Chatzovers. On this season of Chats, our fun little TV book club is going to be covering the HBO drama, The Leftovers. My name is Alan, and I'm joined as always by a man who definitely won't ask me to defecate on him for the podcast. It's Magellan.
Well, now I won't.
Welcome. If you can't already tell, folks, most of the cold opens really only work if you watch the episode. They're really weird out of context. That's the gag. I'm over here explaining jokes like I'm freaking Carlos Mencia or something. Hi. Welcome, everybody. I just want to invite everyone to the space where we talk about our little TV show that we watch in the corner here, and go really deep in on the themes and the jokes and the weird parts and the interesting parts. And we're watching one of my favorite shows, The Leftovers. It's me and Magellan. Magellan, hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Do you like my my shaking up of the intro, like a little salt shaker tonight?
I love it when you shake it up like a little salt shaker.
Resisting urge to delete the podcast. No, I would never. We have to keep it in for realism. Yeah. What's new in your life this week? What's something big that you did this week that you want to share with the class?
I watched these 2 episodes of The Leftovers.
Oh.
It felt like a pretty big life event to me.
It was pretty. I feel like overall we all felt it was big. And I hope that folks are watching at home along with us, because we're going to be talking about The Leftovers here in depth. So first up is Season 2, Episode 3, Off Ramp. We're also going to be talking about Season 2, Episode 4, Orange Sticker. Off Ramp was written by Damon Lindelof and Patrick Somerville, who would go on to create the acclaimed HBO drama Station 11, adaptation of a book, and I'm personally a huge fan of Station 11. So this is Patrick Somerville's first directing gig on this show, or rather writing gig, excuse me. The episode aired October 18th, 2015, and it was directed by Carl Franklin. I had to confirm the air date because I had the wrong air dates. It's fine. October 18th. Magellan, what happened in Off Ramp?
In this episode, Laurie and Tom's work to rescue lost souls takes a toll on them. Laurie tries to spread the word about the dangers of the Guilty Remnant. Tom's infiltration of the cult uncovers new problems. Uh-oh. It's a Laurie and Tom episode. What a blessing. What a delight.
Who would have expected this one, huh?
I know. I loved it. I thought this was
too.
a fantastic episode.
I think it reels you in with a personal story, and I had texted you when I finished. I was towards the end of the second one, and I said, I love watching Leftovers. It's so like restorative, and you said it's very refreshing. And I think it's just like sometimes when the real world is like stressful and chaotic and scary, it's nice to know that there are people in TV shows feeling it too, and being like, this made sense in my head. Why doesn't it make sense in the world anymore? The world doesn't follow any sort of hard rules or anything like that. And I felt that a lot with Laurie's plot, especially in this episode.
Yeah.
Where she's coming back to her like therapy profession, her therapist profession, and realizing that like she cannot just be the one person who runs a group that deconverts or deprograms members of the Guilty Remnant, because it doesn't exactly work like that. So we're pulled into a very interesting plot about all of that. First off, we have it's another character-focused episode, like you said, Laurie and Tom, the combo. And this episode puts us back right before last week, right before the Garvey-centric episode, episode 2. Did you once you were into it, what was your first vibe seeing Laurie and Tom again? Were you excited to see them? Were you worried about like, because I know you had some questions about like, where's Laurie after the events of season 1? Were you satisfied by the answers to that?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I think it's the kind of thing where there's like some piece of connective tissue that maybe I wish I had seen, but that I don't actually need to be there, of how does Laurie get from, the finale of season 1 to this moment, but it kind of explains itself. And I think we're in a really interesting position here. I like Tom and Laurie being together, because I think both of them had interesting stories in season 1, but felt isolated from the rest of the cast, or at least the rest of their family. And so it's nice to see the two of them structuring a family of their own and trying to build something. Yeah, and I don't know. I really am enjoying the situation that they're finding themselves in. And I think it's a way to continue to explore groups and themes and questions from season 1 without rehashing character beats or, giving Tom and Laurie like forward momentum, but still holding their trauma and the things that they're working through from the first season.
Yeah, I think Chris Silka and Amy Brenneman do a great job of like feeling you see the growth between last season and this one. These are characters who this is not your first time seeing them, and they're very aware of that. The show is, and I think it's like the success of the script that it still feels very personal and human, even though like we don't ourselves, the viewer, know of people who take people out of cults ostensibly. You know what I mean? Like, this is not a situation that's quotidian that you see every day, but
Right.
it feels realistic and it feels grounded because of their two performances, especially that you're like, yeah, here is the bureaucracy and the tedium and the frustration of trying to pull people out of a cult, and what that tangibly means. So we can talk about that. So there was, opening first and last shots of the episode, always so important. Very like sexy sort of shot coming out of the car and doing the power walk.
Yeah, it's like a freaking car commercial or something.
With some nice jazz.
This
you like jazz?
Ford is so clean. Oh, yeah.
Built Ford, tough, 0% APR financing. It's like, am I watching TV? Hello?
Yeah. And the reveal, God,
you picked up on why this was happening?
Yeah, the reveal of why this is part of Laurie's routine. Oh, man.
I didn't even get it until I saw your notes, and I was like, wait, what?
It's for people, just to explain, on a regular basis, Laurie goes to nearby Guilty Remnant compounds, sees people in the street, revs the engine, and drives into them on purpose to see if they'll jump out of the way. And then she has to clean her car off when she runs people over.
Because there's a non-zero chance that they're not going to run away. Most of them, she says, don't run away. They don't jump out of the way.
I think she said none of them jump out of the way. Yeah.
Oh, so then, yeah, it's routine. It's just like you're playing GTA. You're getting points. It's so bleak. God. Yeah. And it's also like she's a murderer, She's just a murderer now.
Yeah, I don't know if they're getting killed or what, but they're certainly like dirtying her car hood in some way.
Yeah. She's causing grievous injury to multiple people.
Yeah.
Including her son, in a way. She's kind of forcing this awful task on Tom of infiltrating different Guilty Remnant compounds across the state, across the country, whatever, and trying to deprogram from within and pull people out into these into this sort of community that she's starting to form in the second floor of a commercial building, which, by the way, is owned by her landlord, Victor, who is
just the most mustache twirling landlord. Yeah, I mean, A-Lab, if that's the thing that people say.
It is now.
except for my landlord, who's great.
Yeah, your landlord seems really nice. My landlord, my parents.
But yeah, kudos to the Leftovers for the landlord representation here. Just like the shittiest guy ever.
I think there's a tiny effort to make him seem human. Almost when he's talking to her and she's downstairs and he's like, oh, you owe me more, and she's like, I'm gonna get it to you, and he's like, yeah, I mean, what's the line about the poops? He says because he's catching on that there are people staying in the building, and he says these toilets, they can handle day poops, not night poops. Like, it just not trying at all to really explain the situation. No,
he's just like, give me money so that I won't like kick you out. I can get more money out of you for this.
Yeah, exactly. The pipes don't work differently at different times a day.
Right.
So he's doing that for the sake of it. The part where does become A-Lab is that he's like, oh, what do you got over there? You got bagels? She's like, yeah, I got bagels. He's like, let me see that. And he fucking takes a bagel, like, What? Cartoon Batman. Really appreciated that they just like leaned into that and didn't try to be like, oh, but he's, because when we went to his house, I thought that was going to be the moment where they're like, oh, look, like his wife hates him or something.
Right.
But no, his wife is talking on the phone because basically what happens is Laurie is under pressure from this landlord to pay him extra and pay rent because he's realizing that she's not only doing work, writing her book about her time in the Guilty Remnant in this complex, but also is housing former members of the Guilty Remnant there in the meantime until they can go back to their homes if they still have them. And so he realizes that, and he's like, you're not paying for like people to stay here. You're paying for commercial space. That's like living in a WeWork, basically. So you can't do that, and you need to get out of here. And this escalates to the point where he, like, the Guilty Remnant try coming in several times. And we're going to go loop back and talk about Susan. She's sort of the other, like, Guilty Remnant focal point here.
Yeah.
But just about Victor, he does eventually kick them out unceremoniously, leaves all their stuff on the freaking sidewalk. Awful. Except conspicuously Laurie's laptop, where she has the one copy of her book that's not saved anywhere in the year of our Lord 2015.
Right. And Tom's like, you didn't email it to yourself, which is not the best solution, but I guess it's a solution. Like, Google Drive exists in 2015.
I try to think, if Google Drive didn't exist and you had like a document that you were writing, where did you save it? Because I was in college before. Yeah.
Save it to a thumb drive.
Easy.
Yeah. I remember. But we were in college in 2015 and we were Google Driving it.
We were Google Driving. I think early in college, though, I wasn't like super familiar with the Google Suite. So I was thumb driving.
True. Yeah.
I remember having a thumb drive I got from a Best Buy that used to be near Fenway. It's not there anymore. And it's an 8 gig. I still have it. It's right here, actually. Here's the thumb drive. And I would put documents on.
How much did it cost? Sorry. I just want to know if it really was the Best Buy.
8 gigs. I think it was about $10 in 2012.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oh, that's over $1 a gig.
I mean, they're more now. They're not less, you know.
An 8 gig thumb drive is more than $10 now?
Hold on. 8 GB thumb.
No way.
I'll look this up while we keep talking. On Amazon. Oh, sorry. This is an 8 gig for $5. Okay. Maybe.
Yeah. Ain't no way a gig is worth $1.
Maybe it was less. I don't remember. Again, this was literally a decade ago.
I can get 15 free gigs by making freegigs@gmail.com. And now I have 15 free gigs.
Space is at an inflated premium. It doesn't need to be at a premium like online storage space, but they choose to do that because of money. Anyways, she doesn't back her stuff up. She's worried about losing this laptop. He's like, I can't tell you that I took it because then I'm culpable. She naturally, Laurie's like a little unhinged this episode, for good reason, breaks into his home, sees his wife on the phone, gets worried, sneaks upstairs, sees his son doing some like hardcore gaming on the laptop, which you can tell it's hers because it has the little Buddha sticker on the back. I love that she has the Mac sticker. Like it's 2015, so this tracks. Having the sticker on the back of your MacBook. And she just yanks it from him, and then the wife is like, who the fuck are you? What did you do to my house? She just leaves. I loved that. And then just following her into the like book meeting was amazing. I want to talk about that. But before we jump to all of that, I do want to go back to the aforementioned character Susan, who is again the sort of center of what our viewer perspective on like the Guilty Remnant deprogramming stuff is. So Susan's a middle-aged woman who we identified usually by her like yellow shirt after she gets out of the Guilty Remnant. She doesn't talk for a while. She starts questioning Laurie. Laurie is trying to like ingratiate her out and get her out of the Remnant. This seems like to her like a really important, useful expenditure of time and energy for Laurie. Is like, I might as well get other people out if I learned that it was not so good. I'm curious because you had asked, I think in your notes, like, why did Laurie leave the Guilty Remnant at the end of the season? I want to talk about that a little bit because I feel like it's not obvious why exactly, right? Because they didn't do anything. Well, they did.
I think, what I said before about wanting a piece of connective tissue is really part of the design of the episode. Like, it's it's a bit on the nose when we get to the publisher meeting at the end, and they're like, "But how do you feel about it, Laurie? What are your feelings?" Like that scene is great and also dumb, because it's just so meta.
Yeah, it's
but
arguably too meta.
Yeah, perhaps too meta. And also, like, it felt like I was listening to our podcast a little bit.
Exactly. It's people being like, so what was your motivation behind that? I really loved that moment where you, like, you know, yelled Jill, and I, like, literally heard myself going, like, I love that moment when she yelled Jill. And it's like, no, God, no, I'm sorry.
But that is, like, part of the reason we don't know why Laurie left is because she hasn't taken the time to reflect on that for herself, and she's not being honest with herself. Like, the failure that she experiences here with Susan, partly it's just like, you can't save everybody. You can't turn somebody around in a day or a week. But also partly she's just not honest with herself and not able to be honest with Susan. Like, when Susan starts talking again, and they have this exchange in their group meeting where let's see, what is the exchange? Susan's talking about how she's worried that her husband's like, are you going to come home? And she's worried that he's angry with her. Laurie's like, oh, he's not angry, he just wants you to come home. Susan says, yeah, but he's angry too, like you. And then Laurie goes, I'm not angry. And Susan says, okay. And
moves on. It's like,
we see all this evidence in this episode that Laurie is so angry. Like, she is exploding all over the place and has not been honest with herself about about the effect that being in the Guilty Remnant has had on her. She was like in a leadership position in her cell by the end of season 1. And so part of the Laurie and Tom story, didn't mean for that to rhyme, but here we are. Part of the Laurie and Tom story is the two of them unraveling their respective cult experiences together, and figuring out how to, like, get away from those things. Because then you have Tom, who's kind of like, the Guilty Remnant makes sense, Mom. I don't know. I'm prone to wanting to be in a thing like this. So I don't even remember your question, but I feel like I responded to it.
That's how it goes sometimes. Conversations are fluid, you know? But yeah, I think I want to, like, dedicate a little bit of time to Tom because some of the things that occurred to Tom in this episode are, like, heavy to the point where I'm going to consider putting a content warning on this one.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like he's in his own situation. But yeah, I agree with you that they're both very disillusioned and trying to be leaders to the disillusioned, which is like inherently not going to work because it's like, well, like you said, she is still angry. It exactly mimics the moment in episode 9 of season 1, where Patti, her patient, was like, you're worried. You're feeling something inside of you, aren't you? And she's like, no, I'm not. And it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Where now Susan is like, you're angry. You're doing this because you're mad at the Guilty Remnant. And you hate that they exist. And she's like, no, like, whatever. They're fine. And it's like, you would like them to end. You've like grievously injured a lot of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think the way that this episode explores, go ahead.
Oh, just to kind of close the loop on, I remembered that we were talking about Susan. The what ends up happening with Susan is Laurie brings her home and reassures her husband, like, look, she's not going to want to leave again. She had a bad time with the Guilty Remnant. Here she is. And Laurie is not kind of thinking about the thing that Tom says later, which is, we can strip this thing away from them, but we can't put anything in its place. And so we're, like, returning people to essentially these hollowed out, empty lives. And Susan ends up killing herself and her family driving them, because she just doesn't want to live this life that she has now. And what we realize by the end of the episode is, like, you know, if you want to be a part of people's healing process, you can't think of yourself as just sort of an abstraction or like an objective third party. Like you have to be yourself in that work, and that's something that Laurie realizes by the end of the episode, which I think is a really interesting, messy, difficult, but it feels like a truthful, necessary conclusion for her and Tom to reach.
Yeah, the Susan stuff is so important, and I think maybe could have even come earlier, because it's almost a parallel to Meg too. It's like, what would have happened if Meg had stayed with that guy, that her fiance, where one of my favorite clips from the show SpongeBob is so Squidward, their like beleaguered neighbor, Patrick and SpongeBob's beleaguered neighbor, moves out one day to a community, like a gated community that's all other people like him, like other Squidwards. And at first he's like, this is the greatest experience ever. I'm so happy to be here. I can like play my clarinet, and I can go take classes, and I can go live in my nice house. And the montage is like him doing that 10 times and his eyes slowly glazing over as he realizes that he wanted the challenge of living with neighbors who like, you know, brush against him and not just like being comfortable all the time. And I think that's Susan, and that's also Meg to an extent before she left. He's like, these other people in my life aren't acknowledging it. Like, I'm listening to my husband. This is part where we're focusing on Susan, and the husband's in the background of the scene, like complaining about some work thing. And she's like, and she just stops responding after a certain point, because like, why does any of this matter, dude? Why can you pretend this is normal? The whole thing that the Guilty Remnant gave us was a sense that, yeah, that did matter. And I want you to understand that mattered every day of your damn life. And to deprogram from that is super scary. And, you know, in a way you can almost see from a mile coming that Susan's not going to make it, because she's kind of thrown into it. You know, they talk about gradually letting them out and letting them see their family and letting them talk to them and agreeing, like sitting her down with the husband and Laurie and being like, hey, she's going to want to sleep on the floor for a while. Don't think that that's too weird. She doesn't hate you. She has to promise to stay. That's the thing. That's the moment, right? When Laurie's like, Susan, I need you to promise that you're going to stay with your husband. Don't leave your husband, because you need like someone to ground you. And she nods. And it's like, that's the thing that probably started to push her over the edge, was not only do I have to stick to society, but I have to stick to this one guy who I barely know now, with a kid who I barely know. Like, I'm trapped in another life now. The way that people think that folks are trapped in the Guilty Remnant. So I thought it was really well done, even though it's like it's watching a slow motion car crash that ends in a literal car crash. The whole story of Susan. So I really appreciated that, and I wish people who dropped off of season 1 would continue from this point, because you get to see what leaving the Guilty Remnant actually looked like. And I'm sure she's not the only one of these, you know, because it's a really difficult like ethos to get out of.
Right.
So I liked all of that stuff. I found it all really powerful. And then even just like the small little symbolic moments for Laurie, like we do eventually see her go with Tom to the diner where he meets Jill, and she sits in the car.
Tom's diner.
Tom's diner, yep. Yeah. She sees something on the window and can't get it off. And I kind of love the symbolism of...
Sorry, it's the same diner.
Oh, okay.
Tom's diner from the song, and Tom's restaurant was the same restaurant.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Good. Sorry.
She sees a little thing on, like a little black smudge on the outside of the car window, and she keeps trying to get it off, and then he comes back and she stops. And that's just a moment of like, I'm picking at the thing and it's not going away. I'm picking at the thing. I'm trying to get it off and make the hurt go away, and it won't. It's like, you know, a good little bit of visual storytelling that I got a kick out of.
Yeah. Also, what a kick to see this diner scene from Laurie's perspective, right?
Yeah.
Where she's like, I'm so excited to go be in Jill's vicinity. Can you give her this letter? And Tom's like, sure. And then she's like, did you give Jill the letter? And he's like, yeah.
He's not lying. Great. He gave her the letter.
Yeah, but just this like kind of ignorant bliss that, maybe not bliss, but seeing the kind of lack of information from Laurie's perspective is an interesting way to do a similar type of storytelling to what we saw from episodes 1 to 2, where we were given additional information from the Garvey perspective. But now to see the information that's just straight up lacking from Laurie's perspective, and there's not like something we didn't know. It's just we didn't realize what she doesn't know.
Right.
I thought that was a cool, like dramatic irony kind of thing.
Absolutely. I think that does bring us to Tom, though. I think that covers everybody else. So
Yeah, I think so. Let's talk about Tom.
Yeah. There's a lot of musical cues in this episode that I didn't love. One of which is early on with Tom when he is getting rejected from various Guilty Remnant chapters that he's trying to deconvert or infiltrate. We hear a piano version of Where Is My Mind? And it's like, guys, you did this last week. It's getting less cool every single time you do it. This is the most on-the-nose possible song you could have used.
I was so annoyed. The musical cues across both episodes were not good. Someone needs to be talked to.
Where are you at, by the way? Speaking of music, where are you at with the theme song?
In episode 3, I was like, all right, I'll watch it. And in episode 4, I was like, this is pretty good.
Okay. Every time I listen to it now, I just hear you when I showed it to you going, oh, this is so long. I want to skip it, even though I don't think it's long myself. It's 2 verses.
I liked it now. I think what I like about it now is the show is so bleak and raw, and it's just like, I'm singing a song, and we're singing a song. It's like a nice little
corn and the little sweet peas. You're like, yeah. I think it's cheeky in a dark way. That exactly. It is a little bit of oxygen and like the nice visuals. They're at the beach. They're like experiencing summer and stuff. I like the humor of it. I love the they're all gonna come back as carrots and little sweet peas. I think that's really funny in the way that The Leftovers is funny, and whoever picked that song is really smart because it feels catered for the show. But yeah, no, the Where's My Mind one I didn't think was great. And Tom's goal in this episode is to be Laurie's kind of go-between to the various Guilty Remnant compounds, and he infiltrates by joining and then finds people who seem like they are not doing well and asks them if they're doing okay. Even though he knows they're not, and then kind of leads them to this private community of people where they're allowed to talk again, and the deprogramming process begins with group therapy sessions led by Laurie. And at first he seems like, okay, I'm doing this, I'm figuring it out. And if you're paying attention, you've been watching since season 1, these are like evolving characters. Tom is doing the Wayne thing again. He's like exactly doing it again. Right. And he realizes it. This time it only took him 1 episode to realize it instead of like half the season, where he's like, Mom, like some of them like being there. I think he has the line, right. They're giving them something that they need or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is that they're giving them like a sense of community, and also like they are the only people who are accepting what happened and trying to like put a lens on it instead of just go past it.
Yeah, well, and he has this line after all the stuff that happens to him that we'll talk about, where he says to Laura, you forgot what it's like. They make sense. They know something.
Right. They know something. Ugh.
Spooky.
Very spooky. What do they know exactly? Speaking of people knowing things, just a little side note. After Tom brings one of them back and he's clearly distressed, we get a little clip in the news again. It says that a dead man named David Burton woke up from death in Australia, and they don't know how he mysteriously came back to life. This is actually where Kevin Sr. is going, and it's where the guy from the Watchtower in Miracle gave Michael a letter to send to. So this David Byrne guy in Australia has got something going on that they're seeding really slowly. That's something. But yeah, then he does the whole diners thing, and he goes to one of the compounds and doesn't get accepted. They realize very quickly because a woman blows the whistle at him. I like the comedy of like the people when they got the whistles from Kevin in season 1 never use them, but they do use them to to like red flag people who seem like they're bad actors, like Tom. And so he gets captured, and then this is where it gets really rough, guys. And I'm so curious how we feel about all of this. This was all a trap for him, left by the new leader of the Guilty Remnant, Meg, the new Patti, who locks him in the back of a truck, ties his hands up, and proceeds to rape Tom. Wow, the leftovers. What are you saying here, guys? She then throws him out of the truck with his pengus and pours gasoline on him, lights a cigarette, and you're like, are we literally going to kill Tom right now? Instead, she lights a cigarette and tells him, tell your mom Meg says hello, and they leave him in the middle of the road with his pants off. Which, is a lot, man. I think sexual assault scenes, regardless of the gender dynamics at play, are so difficult to use effectively in a show. Because it often just goes into the extreme level, I've almost never been like, yeah, that one felt appropriate. It's so rare. And if it is, it's like it's because they understand it's a systemic issue. Not this, which is like an evil woman is going to do this to you when you don't expect it. Like that's not that's not how generally these things happen in real life.
Yeah, it also just the way that these things are gendered, where it feels like the show felt more licensed to linger in this scene because
a woman doing it to a man.
Yeah, which is not okay. So I don't know. Like, this is a situation where I always have to take stock of, okay, am I uncomfortable because this is uncomfortable? Or am I
uncomfortable because this is too much?
Right. And like, is this appropriate for the story or what? And I think where I land with it is, I don't know. Like, I'm not particularly invested in this idea of like Meg is a supervillain now. Like, I am intrigued by the Guilty Remnant being this sort of loose, like quasi-anarchistic organization where they have this set of ideas that continues to persist, and we're exploring them and exploring how they like control their members. And I don't know that I'm interested in seeing Meg like rise to power or something, and I don't think I know her well enough to like understand why that's happening or what that means. And it feels inappropriate to me to use this sort of an event to communicate like you should be scared of Meg,
Yeah.
I don't know. And maybe they're gonna like explore the effect that this has had on Tom further later. Maybe it's part of where he arrives at by the end of the episode. I don't know, but the connective tissue isn't really there between his experience and what happens with him later in order for me to feel like this was appropriate or justified. But I'm willing to be, convinced that I'm wrong on that. That's just my feeling about it coming out of this episode.
I'm definitely not the person who's going to convince you that this was worth it. I think that, let's look at the writing perspective of this. Okay, Somerville and Lindelof are like, we need to show people that Meg's in charge now. How do we do that in one scene? We have like a 5-minute scene to show this. Okay, she could be, if we show her killing someone, then viewers are going to say, oh, this is so extreme. How are we supposed to trust the Guilty Remnant now? Okay, well then we have to show her dominating somebody who's a young person that she can do that to, who's like vulnerable. Well, we have Tom and we have this power play going on. Like, I understand the A to B to C that gets you there, but I think that this is definitely too extreme. And like, it tells us, the viewer, that Meg is in charge now, without just her explicitly saying, hi, I'm Meg, the new leader of the Guilty Remnant, and I replaced Patti. But like, what was she trying to communicate to Tom? Just like, don't fuck with us because we'll do awful things to you. We control you. I guess.
Yeah,
okay.
I guess. Right. I don't know.
Throw him on the side of the road and throw gasoline on him. That was enough. You didn't have to do the first part. Like.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is like there's something like really disorienting and in that way controlling about the sort of like intimacy that she like creates an illusion of in that moment that throws him off. And I can see the function that serves if you're like this cult leader who's trying to get people to dissociate from reality and like just be not sure of themselves or their bodies or whatever. Like, there's a world in which it makes sense that a character like Meg might do something like that to Tom to exert a certain kind of control over him, but like they're not explaining that, and they're not exploring that in a way that I think supports that analysis. I think they're just sort of doing it for the sake of like, oh fuck, what just happened? Yeah.
And you've said this before about like the nudity and the violence on the show, but it is also an HBO thing. I mean, this is 2015,
right.
So Game of Thrones is like in the conversation and has also featured.
He also does stuff like this, right?
Frequently and very poorly, like way worse. And so I've like looked at articles at the time where like, on Vanity Fair they like interviewed the creators and like had Alan Sepinwall on like a round table talking about the scene, and he compared it to Game of Thrones, and the creators were like, we didn't want it to be like that. We wanted this to show that she was like in control and in power, but we're not trying to like titillate people. What I think they need to do to stick the landing beyond the scene, though, is show how Tom is traumatized by this. Because it's a deeply, deeply traumatizing event, and if we brush it over and we just say, like, okay, that was weird, Tom feels really vulnerable now, then, like, you are failing to portray victims of sexual assault. You are just showing us a non-consensual sex scene at that point, which, like, that's not what this is. So, I mean, it's worse than that. I mean, so I in the final like therapy scene, you start to see a little bit of crack in Tom's armor of like, I'm scared. They're why are they, why are we losing and all of that stuff. But I don't think in this episode we really get the result of all of this, other than the disillusionment is complete with Laurie's whole situation, because after what Meg did, he's like, we're not in control anymore. We're not doing enough. So let's pivot from that. Let's talk about the rest of the episode. So, big scene. Super uncomfortable, but for different reasons. Laurie gets to meet with a publisher for her book, which she's been writing on that laptop. Didn't save it, but she got the laptop back. She sent it. They invite her into this this group talk about her book, and it's one of the most uncomfortable scenes in the show. Because, like you said, it is a bunch of people picking apart a real woman's life and saying things like, I love the symbolism of this, and you're going to be the next what's next. I think the best part of this scene is just the line, you know what's next, right? Because what Laurie's hearing is, what's coming up. You, like the Guilty Remnant, are thinking about the next thing. But he's saying, the book, what's next? Which is the one that the guy in the hotel in Guest wrote.
Right.
And then they just start asking her, like, what we've been wanting for so long, which is like, why did the Guilty Remnant, like, what? So why are they smoking all those cigarettes, though? And she's like, they never told us. And he's like, yeah, but like, make up a reason. Basically, is like, they had a thing, right? Like, he says Christians have like God and the fear of death and all of that stuff. Doesn't the Guilty Remnant have something for the whole cigarette situation? I think there's even the meta-ness comes from people trying to analyze the show, but also people trying to ask the showrunners for answers and being like, can you actually explain like everything about these people and why they do what they do? And what I think this scene's trying to show us is like, being in the Guilty Remnant doesn't mean you get the answers. There's no like secret answer key that Meg and Laurie and Patti all had that we don't get to see. They just don't know it explicitly. The closest thing we got, I think, was Patti talking to Kevin in the cabin in Cairo. But like, these people don't know. They just joined because it's like it works for you. And I love this scene because you feel the discomfort in Laurie, like the way her insides are squirming around because they are describing her, like I said, her actual life before she leaps on the guy and attempts to choke him out.
Yeah, that was kind of awesome. Gotta be honest.
Cathartic, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
How did you feel about this scene?
I think it is incredibly well edited. I think that's like the triumph of this scene. I think on the page, it's kind of dorky because they're recapping season 1 and like we were talking about before. But I think across the board, this episode is edited incredibly well. From the beginning where we're cutting between Laurie's routine and the like driving music of it, and the sort of, I think we're cutting to Tom with the Guilty Remnant doing his thing, and it's like these moments of quiet.
Yeah.
And yeah, the way that this scene builds to that fever pitch moment of Laurie jumping on the guy and you're with her and you are like, yeah, get that guy.
Get him.
Is pretty great. And, again, I think for as sort of corny as it can be to have people analyze the show that you're watching, they raise good questions of like, well, why did you leave? How do you feel about this? What do you want? How do you view these things that Laurie's not answering for herself? And I think that's kind of a season 2 theme or question overall, right? Is like, because we have the Garvey family, in Jarden now.
Yeah.
And Nora is not asking herself really, why did I just drop $3 million on this house? Like, there are things that we're doing. We're moving forward with a new normal. And we're acting like the old normal isn't still with us. So I think it's a useful kind of thesis statement for season 2. That I think is executed really well from a cinematography and an editing perspective, even if the writing is like, come on, guys.
Yeah. It's did you ever see The Matrix 4? The newest one?
Uh-huh. Yeah, we did a podcast about it for our
Oh my god, we
Patreon.
totally did. Fuck. Whoops. We do a lot, y'all.
Yeah.
You remember that scene towards the beginning where they're asking Neo, like they're trying to pitch the Matrix game, and they're like, so what would the symbolism is like? Is it a trans narrative or like what's? I think it's all about cool guns and suits and slow motion.
Felt kind of like that.
Same vibe where he's like, it was my life. I did that. What do you mean?
Right,
but this is obviously way more serious and not as tongue in cheek. Yeah, I think this is a really cool, interesting like third act of the episode. Is Laurie having so much enthusiasm about this book and how she feels genuinely that like if I can get this book out into the world, then all of this will be worth it. Everything I did to my son and everything I did with these people I'm deprogramming will be worth it because more people will know. And it doesn't seem like it's working out that way anymore, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
Final scene, the last group therapy scene that these people seem like they're going to have for a little while. Initially, Tom asks, or Laurie asks about the Guilty Remnant, why are we losing? As if this is a competition. And that's when Tom says the line that at least the Remnant is giving people something. And then Tom admits this like really fascinating little detail about how he saw Wayne one more time before he left that whole situation. And Wayne gave him a final hug and supposedly gave him his power to remove people's pain. How did you read this? Did this seem legitimate to you?
So I took it at face value when I first watched the episode. Because Laurie shares a story with them that we know to be true. She still doesn't tell them everything that we saw in the flashback episode from the Garveys at their best. So like she's not being totally transparent, but she's telling a version of her story that is truthful. And Tom also shares a version of his story that we know to be full of factual information about Wayne and Christine and his journey in season 1, which we can verify because we saw it happen. And then he shares this thing that we didn't see happen. And when I was watching the episode, I was like, oh, that's weird. All right. They kept that close to the chest. I guess he met with Wayne and got Wayne's powers. But when we were starting to record, suddenly something in my brain was like, was Tom lying? Wait, hold on.
Sure,
what the heck? And are Laurie and Tom like starting, we get this well, because one of the recurring images that we get of Laurie's routine is that she has this glass bowl full of Nicorette gum.
Yeah, that's like going down slowly. She has to keep refilling it.
And it's almost like Tom and Laurie are creating the like Nicorette gum of cults, if that makes sense. Where it's like, yeah, we'll give them like a little taste of there's some worldview or thing that makes sense that they can put stock in, and we'll tell them that we're hugging their pain away. And from there, we'll kind of slowly continue to ease them off of, this sort of thing that they were having fulfilled by their involvement with the Guilty Remnant. So now I think Tom is lying. And he doesn't have Wayne powers, but maybe he does. I don't know. And maybe I'm supposed to not know.
I don't remember. I told you I didn't even remember this plot at all happening when I recalled
Right.
season 2, which is weird to think about. That might just because it's only in like this episode and maybe another one until it smushes into the main plot again. But yeah, I think I can't like spend too much time considering the question of does Tom have power now? What's the use of that? What I do care about with Tom's arc though is he finally finding the control in his life that he desperately needs? Because he has spent his entire his entire adult life, even pre-departure, following other people's rigid routines for him, going to college and then being disillusioned by college, joining Wayne and being disillusioned by Wayne, joining his mom and being disillusioned by his mom, and in all of these things being like, I'm going to follow the rules and I'm going to do what's good and it's going to feel good to me. And it never works out for him. So he's tired of being disillusioned and wants to be the guy who does the thing instead of doing it for someone else. And so maybe him having the powers is like, I can be a good version of Wayne or something. But also, yeah, he could just be full of beans as well. Wayne may still have been full of beans. It's entirely possible. I like that read of it. That's all I have on the episode, though. That's the final moment as we pan out to some nice music, as usual. He says, "Who wants a hug?" And then "Jesus, I'm Calling" by Tangled Eye plays, which is a good song. Stray notes before we move on?
He does a little Jesus pose also, in case you...
He does. In case it wasn't subtle. In case you thought it was subtle.
Yeah. I don't think... I found it interesting that when he goes to a Guilty Remnant place, one of the first things they say is, your pain doesn't matter. Like, they write that to Tom.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting to me that to try to get people out, he always asks, "Are you okay?" Right. Which feels like a question that Tom has never been able to answer truthfully. And so it's something to see him asking that of other people and helping them when he can't accept that help. We've seen him unable to accept that help from other characters.
It's momentum for him, you know.
Yeah.
I have a couple quick ones.
Okay.
I also noted that Laurie is going to need a lot of Nicorette if she's going to try and get everybody to quit their cigarette habits. Nicorette is very expensive. From working in a pharmacy, that's like one of the most expensive single items you can buy, which sucks because it shouldn't. You can get a prescription for it, but you can also just buy it over the counter, and it's pricey. Yeah, and so are like the patches. Oh my god, yeah. It's a racket. I mentioned that the piano version of Where Is My Mind was bad. I mentioned the David Burton thing. Little tiny line here. When Victor is like harassing Laurie about the rent and then talking about how he has her laptop, or maybe he says, "I don't have it." Amy Brenneman is such a good actress. She gets out the line.
She's amazing. "I
can't start over." Talking about her book, but also not talking about her book.
Right. Yeah. Like, I can't unpack all of that stuff again.
Yeah. I cannot, and I can't undo the Guilty Remnant, and I can't undo my family. Right. I gotta keep moving forward and have momentum and drive through people because, oh god, thinking about what I've done is gonna break me in half. So yeah, I thought that was all really good stuff. That's all I had though. Yeah. Those are my strengths. It's a great episode. I
wrote this joke down. I have to read it. But in the opening sequence, I wrote, "Laurie's writing her screenplay while listening to the Birdman soundtrack." It's not that funny, but I couldn't help but write it down. Did we talk about how Tom is falling asleep to Holy Wayne compilations?
To compilations on YouTube? Yeah.
Like weird. His early moments. Strange. But that supports, like, he does actually have Wayne powers, and he's like, how do I become Holy Wayne?
How do I do it? What's the thing he does?
Yeah. So adds to the ambiguity of, like, and also raises the question of, like, Tom coming into using those powers Is that him self-directing his life, or is he still kind of following other people's expectations, even coming into that power? Something to track as the season goes on.
Yeah, I'm curious about Tom. I didn't think I liked him that much.
Yeah.
Or I would like him this much, but now I'm like, oh man, I hope Tom's doing well. Or just what's going on with him. Is that what we have for this one?
Yes, indeed.
Groovy. We'll be right back after a brief musical break to discuss Orange Sticker.
Welcome back to the Chatzovers. The second episode we watched this week was Season 2, Episode 4 of The Leftovers, entitled Orange Sticker. It was written by Damon Lindelof and Tom Speziali? I'm not sure.
I would say Speziali.
Speziali. Let us know, Tom. And it was directed by Tom Shankland. It aired on October 25th, 2015. Alan, what happened in Orange Sticker?
In this, on a very spooky episode of The Leftovers, October 25th, Nora awakens in the midst of an earthquake to find Kevin missing, and the Murphys are left reeling after Evie's disappearance. I don't think I updated that summary after last week's preview summary. I usually try to fill them in a little bit more, but we were on a time schedule, and that still covers what happens in the episode. Nora worries about Kevin. Kevin meets up with John, and also Jill and Michael are having a thing, and I'm not a fan of it. That's all. That's the part that's like spooky Halloween, because there's nothing spookier than teen romance. Sorry, go ahead.
Let's talk about Jill and Michael first. Why does it bother you so much?
It's so predictable. It's just going. I love what I loved about it towards the very end. The last scene of the two of them was where it becomes clear that Jill is like, okay, I like that Michael is very principled and good looking and helpful, but she doesn't understand that what's keeping him away from her is religion. Like, he is a very, very religious person and doesn't approve of atheism specifically. Yeah. And so it in her mind, it's like, oh, this dorky kid is just not understanding that I'm clearly trying to get with him. And for him, it's like, dear Lord Father, please forgive me because she's showing me leg and I don't know how to feel about that. He totally knows, and he just doesn't. Well, he's not responding. So I like that comedy aspect of it. That it's just these two people can't be together right now, but I still think that they're just gonna put them together regardless. If they do some shit like Jill converts in the next episode or whatever, I might be done. That's as a Christian, I don't need to see people be like that. Be trying to convert to get with a guy. I think that's really weird and uncomfortable, actually. That's how I feel about it.
I feel like we're not going to see that. We're just going to see more moments like the one at the end of the episode where he says, "Are you alone?" And then he says, "Me too." And then he starts crying. We're just going to see them cry together a lot, probably.
I love that. Now you're saying things I want.
I'm down for that. That sounds good.
I also, I just think of the top 5 characters in this season that I care about, they're really barely hanging on. And that's why I'm like, okay, can we just please I'll take more Nora and Kevin any day of the week. Do we need any of this Jill, Michael stuff? But also, if you don't, then Michael's not a character. This is all Michael gets, at least Jill gets to sit on the porch with Nora and drink and talk about talk about Kevin. We need to talk about Kevin again. But Michael has nothing outside of this plot line. So yeah, I guess that he has the Watchtower guy, but we don't know when that's going to blow up.
Yeah.
Did you catch the Watchtower guy? I think that was in this episode. It must have been, because there was no miracle in the first episode. Towards the end, Kevin's talking to Patti, and the Watchtower guy goes, "Hey,
who's your friend?" Yeah.
Awesome. Love that. Very much into that. Also, my last note on Michael and Jill was that when she asks him to fix the pipes, first of all, my brain's dirty, so I was like, fix pipes, etc., etc. And then also I heard him in my head go, I can fix that, because I have no taste whatsoever.
We did just do a commentary of Holes for our Patreon.
Yeah, patreon.com/chatspot. Bing.
Yeah.
What's up with Nora and Kevin, though?
Yeah. What's going on with
Kinky.
our lovely couple?
Kinky. Let's get... Well, that's the handcuffs part's very sexy and also tender and also controlling because Nora's worried about Kevin's disappearances. We follow her during the earthquake here. It's like we've seen this earthquake from every single character's perspective now. It's really interesting how we've gotten like all the different people. And what's so scary about Nora's version of it is she doesn't have any information. She calls Kevin, he doesn't answer his phone. They say that the daughters are gone, and her heart drops. And we get this incredible scene early on where she calls 911, and all she can say is, "Did it happen again?" And they're like, "Ma'am, can you speak up?" And she's like, "Did it happen? A bunch of people disappeared. Did the thing happen? You would know if it happened, right?" And then Kevin just shows up at the door, and you're like, because she really did believe for a minute. And that's what a lot of this episode is about, is like, oh God, is it happening again? What does it look like when it happens again? How do we react? So we kind of get like a little taste of all of that for people, which I enjoyed a lot.
Yeah. And it's interesting to watch Nora in this episode. Like, she kind of keeps a lot of this close to the chest throughout the whole episode. She faints at the beginning, and then she kind of collapses into Kevin's arms when he shows up. And then from that scene forward, she's very reserved, and it's like hard to read how she's feeling. But she's super worried about a sudden departure happening again. And so it makes sense that where we get to at the end of the episode is she says to Kevin, like, "I can't wake up like that again.
Yeah.
We're in this together. Like, I am cuffing myself to you." And I'm really curious to see where this goes. And it's just, I don't know, it's cool to see their version of like radically accepting each other and like deeply committing to each other, where she's like, "Okay, so you were here. I don't think you murdered those girls. Pretend like you found your phone today." And he's like, "Wow, that's a great idea."
You're really good, you sneaky lady.
I love that so much. Mm-hmm. Just get yourself a partner like Nora Durst, who can be totally ride or die, just in every possible context. It's awesome.
Even at your worst, when you're like asking, like you've had a bad time, so she goes and buys you alcohol and cigarettes. She goes to the supermarket, and then she sees the old man who we learned is named Virgil, and he pays for her stuff.
Yeah.
Virgil. All right, guys, enough nail on the head. We get it. Religious allegory, Dante. Yeah, it's all there. But this episode is heavy-handed in more than a few ways, mainly the music.
Should we talk about that now, just to get it out of the way?
Yeah, Patti starts her first appearance. She's singing in the pit where Kevin's looking for the girls. She goes, you just start hearing it, and you're like, is that Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley?
Yeah, is Patti Rickrolling us right now? Why? What's happening?
Was Rickrolling? Rickrolling was old in 2015, fam. Come on.
Fam.
That's.
I mean, we know Kevin is a big fan of memes.
True, he's into Neoncast, so this is his brain doing that.
Yeah.
Sorry, the way I said fam there is specific. This is so esoteric, but I want to tell people. SNL, Drake was on for Canadian Jeopardy, so he played a Canadian parody of himself. And the joke I never forget, because it's just such a funny delivery, is they're like, name a famous rapper, and he goes, Cardinal Official, and they're like, that's like some random guy from the middle of Canada, and he goes, come on, fam, everyone knows Cardinal Official. And that's just, I love that. I think that was probably around this time, maybe in like 2016 actually, but yeah. Anyways, she's buying stuff for him. Patty's singing Rick Astley. You think that's the end of the Rick Astley stuff, but then. Oh, the episode concludes with a really tender acoustic version of Never Gonna Give You Up.
No, it's the song from Grease.
Oh, wait. You're the one that I want?
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
It's so dumb. I hated it.
I hated it too. The fact that I forgot.
You better shape up.
Yeah.
'Cause you need a man. And it's like the only part that kind of made sense was the first few lines, and it feels like they let the lyrics go on just a little too long, and it suddenly doesn't make sense anymore, because in the Grease song, there's all these characters who are singing these different parts. I did not like it.
Low Fangs, You're the One That I Want has 11.4 million views on YouTube. People like that version. It's corny. It's really corny, guys.
It's super corny.
The needle drops of this, that's the one that I posted in our Discord. Like, you're gonna hear the most bananas needle drop in S2 E4.
Yeah. It's not on the level of like Newsroom Fix You, but it's not on that level. It's in the top 10 comfortably of worst Chat's needle drops, if not top 5.
The difference is that Fix You is on the nose, but it's the original song. This is a like dark cover of an 80s or whatever 70s. I don't know when. Grease was.
Like they're trying to like make it cool.
And it precedes what's now like the most common thing in every action movie trailer, where they take an old upbeat song and make it like acoustic and downbeat, because that's cool as fuck. And I hate that trend so much. It's in so many movie trailers. I cringed. I gotta say that. I did like the guy in the Watchtower singing Patti though, but that's that's the music stuff. Can we just talk about Kevin and John real quick, because I like this plot?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So John's creepy. I watched this episode in fits and spurts, and every time I came back to it, I was like, John's still being creepy? Yes, he is. He sees Kevin digging for something in the hole and is unsure what he's looking for, and he like picks him up in his car. Kevin's like, "Oh, I mean, my girlfriend was gonna pick me up," and he's like, "I'm actually gonna pick you up." Kevin's ostensibly being kidnapped here, right? He's just like, in like a friendly way, but he doesn't know where they're going. He's like, "My home's that way," and the guy's like, "I know." And John's just like, "Well, I'm taking you somewhere else," and he takes him to the guy's house, whose name we should really look this up. Isaac. He takes him to Isaac's house, and you're like, didn't Isaac already get beat up? What's going on? But they pass through the border to Jarden, and a bunch of people are like knocking on their windows, and other members of like probably the fire department or something are like, we can't keep doing this to Isaac. Maybe he's not like a bad person. We don't have to keep beating him up. And you have this moment where, because you're following Kevin, you can empathize with realizing that you're in the car with the bad guy. Mm-hmm. You're in the car with the guy who's like doing it, and other people are like, "No, you should stop," and he's like, "I'm doing it." And that's where you are, and that sucks.
Right. Right.
Because they go to Isaac's house, and John does a little trick with Kevin where he's like, "Oh, he's over there. If you really want to talk for him instead of me, because I'm gonna beat him with a baseball bat, and you want to talk to him like a cop, which is clearly more level-headed, then go over there and talk to him." It's a misdirect. Take him to the wrong place. He goes in. He attacks Isaac with a bat.
Yeah.
Kevin has to stop him. Why does he
Isaac
go back
shoots
for him? Yes,
huh?
Isaac shoots John. Why does John go back for Isaac is my question.
So it's a subtle thing that they don't draw a lot of attention to, but so Kevin had woken up in where the lake was, right?
Yep.
And he looked into the girl's car. When he did, he left a handprint on the door that he sees that in the next morning.
Oh.
And we hear that they're going to send that to get processed or whatever.
Forensics, yeah.
John assumes that the handprint is a symbol, like a calling card from Isaac or something, because that was his thing, is he would read people's handprints. And so he makes some comment about like, "Oh, left a handprint. Like, I'm going to totally get this guy." And Patti says to Kevin, like, "Oh, lucky duck. It seems like you framed somebody by accident. You didn't even intend to."
Yeah.
And so that's why he goes to Isaac, because he's got it in his head that Isaac said like something bad's going to happen. Now there's a palm print on the door. He must have something to do with this.
Yeah. And this time Isaac is a priest or a religious type with a gun who shoots John point blank.
Yeah.
And they have to get out. I love the editing and directing here, by the way, because we're listening to Patti throughout the episode talk to Kevin and like tease him and flirt with him and just kind of like be a thorn in his side. And in this moment, she said a bit that was so funny to me that I was like cracking up laughing that the instant that Isaac shoots John, like the cut from like, you are laughing so hard at, she tells the story of Neil and how like she discovered him not cheating necessarily, but like having another woman like take a shit on him, and then he's really into that. And she says, and he never even asked me. I'm gonna play the clip here.
My husband Neil, my ex-husband, was engaging in some pretty suspicious texting activity, and then he would leave late at night to go to the office. To the office. That was the best he could do. I mean, put some fucking originality into it, Neil. So I followed him to a motel just like this one. Sat in the car. I watched while he walked into the room, and I considered turning around and going back home. I was scared, Kevin. Scared that when I caught him, it'd be over. He would leave me. But I needed to see, to know. So, got out of my car, walked over to the room, and I took a peek. There was Neil, buck naked, and some woman. She had her shirt on. That was it. She was taking a shit on him, Kevin. A shit. I was married to that asshole for 17 years, and never once did he ask me to shit on him.
It's so funny. It's so funny because of the way that that actress like delivers it. And right, like instant snap fingers, we're cutting to a man getting shot, and you're like, I'm so disoriented, and you feel like Kevin right there. Brilliant. Incredible work.
The other thing from a dialogue perspective that's really brilliant about that is, as Patti was telling that story, I was thinking, okay, wow, this Patti is saying information that Kevin wouldn't know. So this must be Patti. Like if we have some doubt in our minds of, is he seeing her there? Or is this like really her spirit haunting him or something? She's giving this information that only she would know. But then she, as she's talking about it, kind of wonders aloud, I wonder if Laurie ever told you about this. I wonder if like doctor-patient confidentiality or therapist-patient confidentiality would have extended that far, or if she would have told you, which has us wondering, wait a minute, okay, then maybe this is a Patti that's in his head and is not really Patti if he had heard this story from Laurie before. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
So it like introduces, it like makes you think that there's a clear answer, and then it introduces ambiguity into the situation again in a way that I thought was like really interesting and well done.
That's a really good catch, actually.
Thank you.
And you mentioned pre-pod that this also ties back to
the bag
Patti.
of shit that she left outside his door. Yeah.
Love that. Love that little loops around. I love when the Leftovers does that shit. Damn. Yeah, so this is all just really intense. It then leads into John and Kevin going to Erica's practice because he doesn't want to go to a doctor, like the hospital. And you just get, again, the sense that they've done this before. And she's like, yep, a bullet. Okay, here we go. And like pulls this bullet out of him in a really gruesome little shot of her literally like tweezering it out. There's a little bit of comedy where she's like, I have to knock you out. He's like, no, don't knock me out. And then she does. And he's like, she goes, okay. And then she proceeds to actually do it. Is that what was happening?
Yeah. She's like, okay. And he's like, she knocked me out.
Kevin is so confused here if he should be laughing or confused or scared.
Right.
Because on his perspective, it's like, why did you shoot that guy? Why did that guy shoot you? What's going on with Isaac? What do you think is happening? And this all ties into Kevin explaining John explaining to Kevin on the way there that like all these people come to Miracle thinking that it's better here. It is not better here. They're like so excited that the water drained because they can come here and get free water from the bottom of the lake. But it's water. They're drinking lake water. They're going to get sick. Like, this is stupid. We're not a safe town. We're not like, why did you guys come here? He's kind of flipping it on Kevin. You guys clearly paid $3 million on a shit house, $6 million, whatever, to to be somewhere that you felt was safe, and it's not. People die here. People disappear, and this is where you start getting the anxiety of this episode that is like, was there a second departure, and did it finally happen in Miracle? What's going on with that?
Yeah.
But really good stuff. This also is intercut or comes right after the Nora and Jill drinking on the porch and venting with each other scene, which I loved. And I do love the line, "The sudden departure was the greatest alibi in the history of civilization," because she talks about how like her job in insurance meant that she had to occasionally deal with, quote, secondary departures. So people who claim that they had people in their family who departed, and some people lie about that, and some people left their families during the departure because that's again the best alibi ever.
Or like left them after the departure, pretending that a second departure had happened.
Yeah.
Oh.
Pretty dark. Pretty fucked up.
Super dark. I love the delivery of "I found that fucker in Puerto Rico."
Yeah.
Pretty
just
good
like the
line.
guy from Perfect Strangers that they found in I think in Mexico.
Right. That's right.
I would never be able to pay this much attention to all these different details if we weren't podcasting about it. So I'm really getting a lot out of this.
Yeah, it's a very, very detailed show.
Mm-hmm. We had some emotional scenes here towards the bottom. Nora comes to Matt's home in the church because she's worried about, is Miracle real? Is this place safe? And she asks him, is this place real? And he drops a nuclear bombshell, which is that the first day that they came to Miracle, Mary woke up in the middle of the night and spoke to him all night until they fell asleep. And when they woke up the next day, she was back to being comatose. Oh my God. I remembered this plot because it's so incredible. First question. Do you believe Matt?
Don't
you want to? Doesn't it feel comforting to believe that? That, my friend, is the power of religion. Matt basically just gave her like a fable, just gave her like a Bible passage of like, isn't it amazing? She came back. I couldn't show you, but she did. And you want to believe him because Christopher Eccleston's a god tier actor.
Mm-hmm. The nice thing is the next episode is like a Matt episode. So.
Oh yeah, no room at the end. Yes.
Yeah, so we'll maybe get some more exploration of that. But I don't know. It still doesn't answer for me the question of like, how did he find out about this place? Why did he come here? Why would he expect something like that to happen here?
Yeah.
So still some unanswered questions. I'm willing to believe that it happened because, like you said, it's fun too. But Matt Jameson, I don't know. I don't know if I trust this guy or not.
He's done a lot of good and bad things for good and bad reasons. Like everyone, he's human. But I love also just Nora hugging him, just a deep hug of like, oh, thank you. She's in a church being like, she's basically having like a freaking religious service here. They're telling her a miracle happened and she's believing it and it's giving her like comfort. So she's getting this like beautiful little religious experience via Matt. And I like that a lot. I really want Mary to have woken up and then have like just the idea of them having a beautiful little conversation and like laughing and kissing and all that, and then he wakes up the next day and it's like, oops, not anymore.
Yeah.
Going back though, one quick thing we learned that ties into the end of the episode: the government came by every house in Miracle to confirm that nobody departed, and they left orange signs on each person's door. That say like confirmed or something, or clear. Michael tells Jill this to be like, that's a weird thing. She's like, why do you guys have these signs? And he's like, yeah, it's because they needed a systemic way to confirm it. We also learned a little bit of backstory, like how Evie was born several months early, so she's a miracle child, making us think more about what's going on with Evie. She was like a difficult birth. And then one more bombshell. Just one more quick, well, I guess two, if you consider Michael removing the poster at the end, because now he thinks that Evie's departed. That's a bombshell. But the real final bombshell is that Patti reveals what we all could have guessed, that the reason that Kevin went into the water was not because he was just daydreaming about nothing or that he wanted to get a drink, but because he wanted to die. He's talked about, or he said, like, I'm okay now. I have Nora, I have Jill. Things are good. Clearly not, because he tied a cinder block to his leg and put himself in the lake, and the only reason he survived was because of a miracle. Huh. Kevin might have special luck powers, it seems.
Patti also says that the girls departed.
Yeah, she's like, it's what you think it is.
Which is what Michael thinks happened, too.
Yeah, that's why he removes the sign at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Verified, that's what it says. Kevin tells Nora, he like sits in bed with her and has these handcuffs. This is so sexy.
Stop it.
I'll stop it. But they put the handcuffs on each other, and again, it's like, I'm horny for you, but I also don't want you to run away again, and I want to be attached to the person I love, you know? So there's something tender about it. But right as they're going to sleep, you think the episode's going to end on that, and she whispers, Kevin, do you think the girls are going to come back? And he goes, I don't think so. Oh, Michelle, what happened to the girls? Can you just tell me what happened to the girls?
They got departed somehow.
That sucks, dude. Ugh. Okay. Well, I hope nobody else gets departed. What if there's just like every season there's a departure? And it's a different number of people.
That would suck.
It'd be really
That'd be bad.
And then Jill wakes up and sees Michael doing the thing. That's the episode. It's great. I like this episode. I thought some of the Michael John stuff was like getting a little boring when it's just like we're driving around and we're being threatening to each other. But getting to Isaac and then everything after that, I was like fully on board with this episode. So I came around on orange sticker. I have a quick stray note that's important to note. Speaking of noting notes. Did you catch the shot of Erica, John's wife, adjusting her hearing aid?
No.
So Erica is hearing impaired. She's playing it. Regina King's playing a disabled character. So she did a lot of interviews at the time about this and how she has a quote about like, I didn't know how to play it, and I realized that there were tons of crew on the show who were hearing impaired, and I didn't even think about it, and so it just became this like unconscious thing that they live with. And I had to ask them questions about like, what do you like? How do certain things sound? The only reason I bring that up is one, it's a character detail, and two, Erica still heard the cricket in season 2, episode 1. We didn't. I don't know if she had her hearing aid in during that scene, so that's weird.
Interesting.
Juicy. Many mysteries. Do you have any stray notes?
John drinks a beer in the car. I thought you didn't drink. My daughter's missing.
I love that line. I noted that too.
Yeah. I love Justin Theroux's so good at making a bewildered face. We live back there. What's happening?
John has to be like, he's my neighbor. It's okay. He's like, where do I live? I don't know what my address is. Also, Isaac saying, right, but after he shoots John, he says, ain't nothing more dangerous than a man who don't believe in nothing. This is the season about atheists being scary. I don't actually think that's what it is, but yeah. That's what we got. I think that brings the sticker to a close. Let's take a peek forward into what we're watching next week on the Chatzovers, yeah?
Let's do it.
Next week, we are watching Season 2, Episode 5, No Room at the Inn. Matt takes his wife outside of Miracle to seek answers about her condition, but he struggles to keep her safe from desperate tourists outside the town's gates. It's a Matt episode. You're going to love it. It's great. Next up is Lens, Season 2, Episode 6. Nora is irritated by unexpected visitors. Kevin's predicament becomes impossible to ignore, and Erica finds an unlikely ally and reveals haunting secrets. Exciting. Very exciting. Yeah, did you want to tell me, Majel, what you have going on the internet these days? Do you want to plug?
Surely. I'm on another podcast once a month called Super Smash Echoes. It's a video game podcast. It's sort of a video game book club that I host with my friend Justin, where we play games that are related to Super Smash Brothers in some way, and it's a fun time. Check it out. Super Smash Echoes. Alan, what about you?
I do 2 other podcasts primarily. One of them is The Hunter's Quorum, which is where my friends Six and Casey, a.k.a. Manofsky, talking about the monsters of the Monster Hunter video game franchise, and we have a fun gag of a time there. It's a little comedy rating podcast. I'm also the director of content for the American Marketing Association in Boston, and that means that I'm the primary host and producer of their Talking Marketing podcast, which is a 101 look into, it's an interview conversation series with different marketing experts in the industries, and just kind of like demystifying their craft. So if you care about marketing at all, or you're into that sort of thing, you want to hear my voice on a very different podcast, then check out Talking Marketing wherever you listen to those. That's what we have. I will hit us with a plug zone if you don't mind.
Do it.
Boki dokie. If you'd like to email us questions, comments, or concerns, please hit up chatspod@gmail.com. That's CHATZPOD. We're also at Chatspod on Twitter. We have a subreddit, which is our Chatspod. And we are on all the major podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And we would really appreciate a rating or a review. For reals, guys, just take a second. If you haven't reviewed a podcast this week, maybe just go ahead and hit it with a couple stars. Maybe write a little review. That really helps us. If you have the money, and we really appreciate that if you're able to, we have a Patreon, which is patreon.com/chatspod, where we have all sorts of bonus content for $1, $3, and $5 monthly tiers. $1 a month gets you a light library of podcasts, including Magellan's solo X-Files show. $3 gets you our entire backlog of shows, including our commentaries over where we talk over movies, like Holes. And $5 gets you all of those things, plus a thank you at the end of every main feed episode of Chats. Those $5 tier patrons today include Arthur, Chloe, Jen, Kat, Lee, Magellan's mom, Marcus, Marin, Michael, Nick and Pat of the Brothers at Infinite War, Fendon, Six, and Stefan. Thank you all for supporting Chats. All things Chatspod can be found at chatspod.com. Our podcast art was done by Camilla. She can be found at Camilla Strader on all the social media platforms. And that is what we have for the show. We like to end things by doing a segment called Chatsums, where we recommend something for the listener to enjoy between now and the next episode of Chats. I'll go first. Usually when I do the outro, I make you go first, but I want to go first this time, Majel, if that's okay.
I'm okay with it.
Thank you. I'm going to talk about a movie that I watched. I was having not a rough Saturday, but just like a kind of like indoorsy, quiet Saturday, you know? And, I've chat-summed the Austin Danger podcast before, which is a podcast where Kevin McKenzie, two film buffs, watch movies that are in any way cast or crew related to the Austin Powers films. And they recently watched 2000's Charlie's Angels with Drew Barrymore, Cameron Diaz, and Lucy Liu. And I had never seen that movie because I was, there's just such a huge swath of incredible films that I didn't watch because they were quote unquote too girly for me. Funny considering that I watched Princess Diaries like 10 times as a kid. So I have a lot of questions about that. But no, Charlie's Angels, guys, the movie holds up so well. It's so dope. It's funny. It's empowering to women. It's also wildly sexist at the same exact time. So somehow Bill Murray's in it inexplicably. Lucy Liu's the most beautiful person alive. I just have to say that. It's dope. And there's like a lot of funny parts in it. They go to Soul Train for a date at one point, and Cameron Diaz gets made fun of for having a small butt. It's really weird, and it really perked up my weekend. And I if you haven't seen the Charlie's Angels 2000, not the one from 2019 with Kristen Stewart, I've heard that one's kind of bad. The OG 2001. And I've heard Charlie's Angels Full Throttle is also very good. I'm going to check that out at some point, but that's my chat song. John, what about you?
My Chatsum's a TV show on HBO Max. Listen, I'm a fan of Nathan Fielder. I'm a fan of Nathan For You. And the good guy has come on back to TV, and he's done a whole new show called The Rehearsal, where he helps people, as he does, by helping them to rehearse for life moments. And in true Nathan Fielder fashion, he just goes whole hog doing that. And it's a lot. He spends... If you can imagine this, there's a guy, the first episode is this guy who wants to admit to a member of his bar trivia team that he's been lying for a decade about having a master's degree. And the episode is 45 minutes long, and it's all about rehearsing and preparing the guy for that. So, yeah. It's great. The Rehearsal's great. That's my recommendation.
I need to check it out, especially because it's that first time you get to watch a Nathan Fielder show as it's coming out, and so the memes are happening in real time. I've already seen people talk about Thrifty Boy from that episode.
Thrifty Boy's great, yeah.
So I have to watch him. And don't show me an episode of A Nathan for You just to reintroduce me to the vibe of a Nathan Fielder show. And it's an acquired taste. If you don't like feeling deeply uncomfortable, then
yeah, it's not for you.
It's
sorry to say.
It's Nathan for you, but it's not for you. It's not thin for you.
Not thin.
And so I dug it. I really want to check out that show. The rehearsal. I want to check out The Rehearsal. It's on HBO. Thank you, Magellan. In general, for being the smudge on my car door to my Laurie Garvey. I just can't get rid of you. And thank you, dear listener, for listening to the Chatzovers, where nobody disappeared and nothing happened. Goodbye.
Bye.